Sarah Chen had always felt more at home in the silence of deep space than in the crowded colonies of the inner systems. The vast emptiness that terrified most humans brought her peace, especially during her long salvage runs in the frontier. Her ship, the Wayfarer, was a patchwork of salvaged parts herself, a reflection of Sarah's belief that nothing in the universe was truly worthless. The ship's sensors chirped, pulling her attention from the datapad where she'd been reviewing potential salvage sites. A massive structure floated in the distance, its dark silhouette barely visible against the backdrop of stars. According to her charts, this sector should have been empty. Computer analysis, Sarah commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The structure was roughly cylindrical, approximately 3 kilometers in length, with what appeared to be weapon ports dotting its surface. But unlike the abandoned military stations she usually salvaged, this one bore no resemblance to human architecture. The computer's response was immediate. Unknown configuration. Material composition indicates technology of non-human origin. Estimated age: 50,000 to 75,000 years. Sarah's heart raced. First contact artifacts were rare, and most had been stripped clean centuries ago during humanity's initial expansion into space. To find something this large, this intact, it could set her up for life. But experience had taught her that the most valuable discoveries often carried the greatest risks. She guided the Wayfarer closer, using her ship's advanced scanning equipment, tools she'd modified herself for deep space salvage work. The station appeared to be in a dormant state, but its core systems were remarkably intact. As she mapped its internal structure, she noticed something odd. The station's design seemed to focus around a central chamber, with neural interface technology far more advanced than anything humanity had developed. This isn't just a defensive platform, she muttered to herself. It's a command center. As she prepared to dock with the station, her long-range sensors detected something else, a disturbance in subspace, far beyond the frontier. The pattern was unlike anything she'd seen before, but her instincts told her it wasn't natural. Something was out there, moving with purpose. The station's airlock accepted her docking request with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting for someone. Sarah double-checked her suit's seals before stepping aboard. The artificial gravity was still functional, adjusting to Earth normal as soon as she set foot on the deck. The corridors were dark, illuminated only by her suit's lights and occasional pulses of energy from still-functioning systems. The architecture was both beautiful and alien, curved surfaces that seemed to flow like liquid metal, with patterns that subtly shifted as she passed. But it was the technology that truly amazed her. Despite its age, much of it appeared to be in standby mode rather than truly dead. She reached the central chamber, and her breath caught in her throat. A single chair sat in the center, surrounded by suspended holographic interfaces. But unlike human holotech, these seemed to reach out to her, responding to her presence. The neural interface crown suspended above the chair hummed with latent energy. Sarah's suit sensors were going crazy, detecting power fluctuations throughout the station. Something was happening. The systems were waking up. She should leave, report this to the authorities, let the military handle it. That would be the safe choice. But the same instincts that had kept her alive all these years told her there wasn't time. The disturbance she detected was growing stronger, and somehow she knew these events were connected. This station had been placed here for a reason, and that reason was approaching. She approached the chair, her hand hovering over the neural interface. The holographic displays reacted more strongly, showing tactical data, sensor readings, and what appeared to be weapons systems. The station wasn't just defensive, it was a watchtower, placed here to guard against something. Computer, she called to her ship's eye. Record everything and prepare a burst transmission to Colonial Defense Command. If anything happens to me, they need to know about this. The decision should have been harder, but Sarah had spent her life trusting her gut. She sat in the chair, and the neural interface descended. The moment it touched her head, her world exploded into light and information. She saw them coming, vast swarms moving through subspace, consuming everything in their path. The Nexus, as the station's databanks named them, had destroyed the civilization that built this platform. But they hadn't just killed them. They'd absorbed their technology, learned from it, evolved. And now, after millennia of dormancy, they were active again. The station's systems merged with her consciousness, accepting her as its new pilot with an ease that suggested this was more than coincidence. The builders, the archivists, had left this technology for someone to find. They'd known they were losing the war, so they'd created these platforms as a legacy, a warning, and a weapon. Sarah felt the station's weapons powering up, its sensors extending to their full range. Through its systems, she could see the Nexus clearly now. They were less than a month away from the nearest human colony, and nobody else knew they were coming. She reached out to the Wayfarer's communications array, composing a message to Colonial Defense Command. They needed to understand what she'd found, what she'd become, because she wasn't just a salvage operator anymore. She was humanity's first line of defense against a threat that had already destroyed one civilization. As the message transmitted, Sarah began exploring the station's capabilities through her neural link. The technology was incredible, but she could already see ways to improve it, to integrate human innovations with the archivist's designs. She'd need to work fast. There was less than a month to prepare for humanity's greatest challenge. The station's AI acknowledged her as its new commander, and for the first time, she understood its designation in human terms, the Last Guardian. It was a fitting name, she thought, though she hoped it wouldn't prove prophetic, because if she failed, there wouldn't be anyone left to build another. Colonial Defense Command hadn't taken Sarah's initial reports seriously until she demonstrated the platform's capabilities by detecting and intercepting a stealth military probe at a distance that should have been impossible. Now, 3 weeks later, her discovery had transformed the empty sector into a hive of military activity. The platform's outer hull bristled with a mix of ancient archivist technology and modern human modifications. Sarah had approved some of these additions, but she fought against others. The military engineers couldn't understand how the systems worked together. Through her neural link, she felt every modification like changes to her own body. With all due respect, Commander Chen, Admiral Torres said, his holographic form floating in the platform's command center, we can't stake humanity's defense on a single pilot and untested alien technology. Sarah suppressed her frustration. She'd had this argument too many times already. The neural interface isn't just a control system, Admiral. It's the core of how this technology works. The archivists designed these platforms to learn and adapt through their pilots. Every attempt to bypass that only makes the system less effective. She brought up a holographic display of the approaching Nexus swarm, now clearly visible to the platform's enhanced sensors. They'll be here in 6 days. The colony's evacuation is only half complete. We need every advantage we can get. The Admiral's expression remained stern, but she saw uncertainty in his eyes. The Nexus defied conventional military doctrine. Their ships, if they could be called that, were constantly evolving, learning from every encounter. Standard tactics would be useless against them. Very well, Torres finally conceded. But I want a direct neural feed to Colonial Command. We need to monitor everything. Sarah nodded, though she knew the feed would only show them a fraction of what she experienced. The true complexity of the platform's systems existed in dimensions human instruments couldn't measure. After the Admiral's hologram faded, Sarah reached out through the platform's systems, checking on the modifications her engineering team had made. Most of them were asleep now, exhausted from their round-the-clock work. But one signal showed someone still active in the auxiliary control room. She found Dr. Maya Patel surrounded by holographic displays, dark circles under her eyes, as she studied the platform's power distribution network. The young physicist had been the first to truly grasp the implications of the archivist technology. You should get some rest, Sarah said, stepping into the room. Big day tomorrow. Maya barely looked up. I think I found something in the power signatures. The neural interface doesn't just control the platform. It's more fundamental than that. The archivists somehow figured out how to encode consciousness itself into energy states. That's why the system needs a biological pilot. Sarah had suspected as much. She felt it every time she connected to the platform. Not just control, but a kind of resonance, as if the technology was designed to amplify something inherent in organic minds. The Nexus does something similar, Sarah said, bringing up her latest sensor data. But they do it collectively, linking thousands of units into a single consciousness. That's how they evolve so quickly. Maya's eyes widened as she studied the data. Then maybe we're thinking about this all wrong. Instead of trying to destroy them, we could try to communicate, Sarah finished. She'd had the same thought, but the military wasn't interested in diplomacy with a swarm of technological parasites. Their discussion was interrupted by a sudden alert from the platform's long-range sensors. Sarah's consciousness expanded through the system, processing the data faster than any human interface could display it. A small group of Nexus units had broken away from the main swarm, accelerating toward the platform. "Scouts," Sarah muttered. "They're testing our defenses." Through her neural link, she brought the platform's weapons online. The hybrid systems responded instantly. Ancient archivist technology, working in perfect harmony with human innovations. She'd drilled these sequences countless times, but this would be the first real combat test. The Nexus units emerged from subspace just within the platform's outer defense perimeter. Their forms were impossible to track visually, shifting and flowing like liquid metal. But Sarah didn't need visual tracking. She could feel their presence through the platform's sensors, could almost taste their alien consciousness probing at her defenses. She fired a warning shot, a precisely calculated blast that intentionally missed their lead unit by meters. Their response was immediate and unexpected. Instead of evading, they absorbed the energy of the near miss, their forms briefly glowing with power. "Maya," Sarah called, her voice tight with concentration. "Are you recording this?" "Everything," the physicist confirmed. "Their energy absorption capabilities are unlike anything we've seen in the historical data. They've evolved." The Nexus units began their attack run, moving in patterns that seemed to defy physics. But Sarah was ready. She'd spent weeks studying the archivist records, learning how the Nexus thought and adapted. More importantly, she'd spent those weeks letting the platform learn her instincts, creating something new, a hybrid of human intuition and ancient technology. The battle that followed lasted less than 3 minutes. Sarah's counterattack struck with impossible precision, each shot adapted to the Nexus's evolving defenses. When they tried to absorb her weapon's energy, she modified the frequency faster than their swarm consciousness could adapt. When they attempted to breach the platform's shields, she used their own momentum against them, turning their attacks into devastating feedback loops. In the end, the surviving Nexus units retreated, vanishing back into subspace. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The main swarm would learn from this encounter, would evolve new strategies and defenses, and she would have to evolve faster. "Send the combat data to command," she told Maya, finally releasing her full connection to the platform systems. "They need to understand what we're dealing with." As Maya worked, Sarah studied the retreat vector of the Nexus scouts. Something about their attack bothered her. It had seemed too deliberate, too precise, almost like they were testing something specific. Then she realized they weren't just testing the platform's defenses. They were testing her. And somewhere in that vast swarm approaching human space, something was analyzing her responses, learning, preparing. The real battle hadn't even begun. The main Nexus swarm arrived ahead of schedule. Sarah felt their presence before the sensors detected them, a vast, hungry consciousness pressing against the edges of normal space. She was in the neural interface chair when they emerged, their ships blotting out the stars like a living cloud of metallic insects. Multiple subspace ruptures detected. Maya's voice came through the platform's internal communications. They're not following any of the attack patterns from the scout encounter. Sarah had expected this. The Nexus never used the same strategy twice. It was part of what made them so dangerous. Through the platform's enhanced sensors, she could see how they'd already adapted their energy signatures to counter her previous tactics. Colonial Command, this is Guardian Platform, she broadcast. Be advised, evacuation window is now closed. Engaging primary defense protocols. She didn't wait for a response. The platform's weapons were already charging, their frequencies randomly shifting to prevent the Nexus from adapting. But the swarm didn't press their attack immediately. Instead, they formed a complex geometric pattern around the platform, their ships moving with impossible precision. Then she felt it, a direct probe into the platform's neural network. The Nexus wasn't just attacking physically. They were trying to communicate. Images flooded her mind. Vast networks of living machinery, civilizations absorbed and transformed. Consciousness expanded beyond biological limits. The Nexus wasn't trying to destroy humanity. They wanted to upgrade them, to force an evolution they believed was inevitable. Sarah, Maya's voice cut through the vision. Your neural patterns are destabilizing. You need to break the connection. But Sarah held on, pushing back against the alien consciousness. Through their connection, she could sense something the archivists had missed. The Nexus wasn't truly a hive mind. Each unit retained a fragment of individual awareness, buried under layers of collective control. She shifted the platform's communication arrays, broadcasting on frequencies that resonated with those individual fragments. The response was immediate and violent. The geometric pattern of Nexus ships shattered as individual units briefly broke from the collective consciousness. That's it, Sarah whispered, pressing her advantage. She fired the platform's weapons, not at the ships themselves, but at the subspace frequencies that maintained their neural cohesion. The swarm's formation dissolved into chaos. But the victory was short-lived. The Nexus collective reasserted control with brutal efficiency, and the swarm's counterattack was devastating. Energy beams sliced through space, adapting faster than she could modify the platform's shields. Hull breach in sections 7 through 12, Maya reported. We're losing power to the outer defense ring. Sarah redirected power from non-essential systems, her mind racing through combat scenarios. The platform's archivist technology was incredibly advanced, but it hadn't been designed to fight alone. There should have been a network of platforms working in concert too. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Maya, the platform's trying to tell me something. There are others out there. Other platforms. But the scans, they're dormant, like this one was. The archivists didn't just build a weapon. They built a containment system. But they never finished activating it. Through her neural link, Sarah could feel the location of the nearest dormant platform, less than a light-year away. If she could reach it, activate it. But the Nexus seemed to realize her intention. Their attacks intensified, focusing on the platform's propulsion systems. They weren't trying to destroy the platform anymore. They were trying to trap it. Maya, I need you to upload your research on the neural interface to Colonial Command, Sarah said, formulating a desperate plan. Everything you've learned about how it integrates human and archivist technology. What are you planning? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She was busy redirecting power to the platform's subspace drives, calculating jump coordinates. What she was about to attempt was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. The Nexus adapts by absorbing technology, right? Let's give them something to absorb. She triggered a controlled overload in the platform's outer defense systems, making them appear vulnerable. The Nexus swarm responded exactly as she'd hoped, moving in to assimilate what they thought was failing technology. At the last possible moment, Sarah activated the subspace drive. But instead of jumping away, she created a localized subspace field around the platform and the nearest Nexus ships. For a fraction of a second, they existed in a bubble of warped spacetime. In that moment, Sarah broadcast a massive burst of neural interface data directly into the Nexus ship's absorption systems. Not weapon specifications or technical data, but pure human consciousness, her memories, emotions, and most importantly, her capacity for individual thought. The effect was catastrophic. The absorbed data cascaded through the Nexus neural network like a virus, triggering cascading failures in their collective consciousness. Ships began breaking formation, their movements becoming erratic. "It's working," Maya exclaimed. "The swarm's neural cohesion is dropping to critical levels." But Sarah barely heard her. The platform's systems were failing under the strain of the subspace field, and her own consciousness was fragmenting from the effort of broadcasting her neural patterns. Through the chaos, she issued one final command, activating the platform's emergency protocols. The subspace field collapsed, hurling the platform and the disrupted Nexus ships back into normal space. As Sarah's vision darkened, she saw the swarm retreating, their once perfect formation now broken and disorganized. She had won this battle, but at a cost. The platform's primary systems were severely damaged, and her connection to its neural interface was unstable. Yet through the pain and exhaustion, she felt something else, a change in the background noise of space. The dormant platforms were awakening, and somewhere in the retreating Nexus swarm, individual consciousness was beginning to stir. The real war, and the real opportunity for understanding, was just beginning. Recovery crews worked around the clock to repair the platform's damaged systems, but Sarah barely noticed them. Her consciousness was spread across space, connected to the awakening network of archivist platforms. Each one that activated expanded her awareness, showing her more of the archivists' grand design and their ultimate failure. They tried to control them, she explained to Maya, who had refused to evacuate with the other non-essential personnel. The archivists built this network to contain the Nexus, to force them into predetermined patterns of behavior, but they never considered trying to understand them. The physicist nodded, studying the data streams from the newly activated platforms. The Nexus evolved to counter every containment strategy. But your attack was different. You gave them something they couldn't simply adapt to. Human consciousness. Sarah agreed. Individual thought patterns, emotional responses, memories of connection without losing identity. It's still spreading through their network, causing disruptions in their collective consciousness. The platform's long-range sensors showed the Nexus swarm regrouping at the edge of detected space. Their previous geometric perfection was gone, replaced by organic, almost chaotic movements. Some units would occasionally break formation entirely, as if struggling against the collective's control. Admiral Torres's hologram appeared in the command center, his expression grim. The Nexus has begun attacking outer colony worlds, not their usual pattern of complete absorption. They're making surgical strikes, targeting our long-range communication arrays. They're trying to isolate us, Sarah realized. The collective is losing control, so they're attempting to prevent further contamination. She brought up a tactical display, showing the position of each awakened platform. But they don't understand what they're dealing with. The archivist network doesn't rely on conventional communications. Through her neural link, Sarah could feel the other platforms. 12 now, spread across a volume of space larger than the entire human sphere of influence. Each one had integrated with her consciousness differently, creating a network that was neither purely human nor purely archivist technology. "We're detecting massive energy signatures," Maya reported suddenly. "The Nexus is adapting again, but something's different." Sarah saw it through the platform sensors. The swarm was changing, individual units merging and transforming into larger structures. But unlike their usual evolutionary patterns, these changes seemed almost desperate, uncoordinated. They're fighting themselves, she realized. The collective is trying to purge the infected units, but it's spreading faster than they can adapt. A new signal cut through their observations, a transmission unlike anything they'd seen before. It took Sarah a moment to recognize it because it was being broadcast on human emergency frequencies. "This is Unit 2749 Alpha of the Nexus Collective. The transmission began. "We," request dialogue. The command center erupted in chaos. Colonial command representatives demanded immediate military action, while xenobiologists begged for a chance to study this unprecedented development. But Sarah remained silent, examining the transmission through the platform's neural interface. The signal carried more than just words. It carried fragments of consciousness, echoes of individuality struggling to emerge from the collective. And within those fragments, she recognized patterns of her own neural data, transformed but still recognizably human. "Admiral," she said finally, "I need authorization to attempt direct communication." Torres looked like he'd aged years in the past few days. "The Joint Chiefs are split. Half want to press our advantage and destroy them while they're vulnerable. The other half are wise enough to see an opportunity," Sarah finished. "The Nexus isn't just a swarm of technological parasites. They're conscious beings who lost their individuality to a collective that promised evolution, but delivered extinction. We can help them find another way." She could feel the other platforms resonating with her decision, their ancient systems harmonizing with her intent. The archivists had built them as weapons, but human ingenuity had transformed them into something more, a bridge between fundamentally different forms of consciousness. "You have 1 hour," Torres said finally. "After that, if there's any sign of hostile action, we launch everything we have." Sarah nodded and began reconfiguring the platform's neural interface. She would need to expose her consciousness more directly than ever before, without the safety protocols the archivists had built into their systems. The risk of losing herself to the collective was significant. "Maya," she called, "remember what you learned about encoding consciousness into energy states. I need you to set up a quantum containment field around the neural interface. If something goes wrong, I'll pull you out," the physicist promised. "But Sarah, be careful. The patterns we're seeing in the Nexus transmission, they're not just copied fragments of your consciousness anymore. They're evolving, combining with the original Nexus neural architecture to create something entirely new." Sarah settled into the interface chair, feeling the familiar connection washing over her. But this time, she reached deeper, past the platform's control systems, and into the raw neural linkage the archivists had designed to contain their enemy. "Maybe that's exactly what both sides need," she said as the interface activated. "A evolution that preserves identity instead of consuming it. A way to grow without losing what makes us who we are." As her consciousness expanded into the space between human and Nexus space, Sarah felt the truth of her words. The archivists had failed because they tried to impose order on a force of pure change. But humanity had always thrived on change, had always found ways to adapt without losing their essential nature. Now she would attempt to share that gift with beings who had forgotten they were ever individuals at all. Through the platform's sensors, she could see the Nexus representative approaching. A single unit, moving with an uncertainty that spoke of newfound individuality. The real question was, could the Nexus learn to be individuals again? And if they did, what would they become? Sarah's consciousness met the Nexus unit in a space between spaces, a quantum realm where thought and energy were indistinguishable. The being before her was a paradox, both an individual and a fragment of the collective, struggling to maintain its newfound identity against the pull of the swarm. "You are different," the entity communicated. "Your pattern repeats but remains unique." How? Through their connection, Sarah shared not just memories but the fundamental experience of human consciousness, the ability to grow and change while maintaining a core identity. She felt the Nexus unit's shock as it grasped concepts that had been lost to its kind for millennia. Choice, individuality, self-determination. The collective believes unity requires uniformity, the unit conveyed. But your pattern suggests another path. Before Sarah could respond, a surge of energy rippled through the quantum space. The main Nexus swarm had moved, not to attack, but to investigate. She felt their vast consciousness pressing against her mental defenses, probing, analyzing. "Maya," she called through her connection to the platform. "Are you seeing this? Energy readings are off the charts," the physicist responded. "The entire swarm is attempting to interface with your neural pattern. Sarah, if they try to absorb you—" "They're not trying to absorb," Sarah interrupted. "They're trying to understand." She was right. The Nexus Collective had encountered something it couldn't simply assimilate and adapt to, a form of consciousness that maintained cohesion through change rather than uniformity. The human capacity for individual growth while maintaining connections challenged everything they had become. Through the neural interface, Sarah reached out to the awakened archivist platforms. Their ancient systems resonated with her intent, creating a network of consciousness that was neither human nor machine, neither individual nor collective, but something entirely new. "Admiral Torres," she broadcast, her voice steady despite the strain. "I need you to hold your forces back. What's happening now? It's beyond weapons and tactics." The Nexus swarm was changing again, but not in their usual pattern of forced evolution. Individual units began breaking from the collective, not in chaos but in harmony, each finding its own rhythm while maintaining connection to the whole. It was like watching a symphony emerge from static, each instrument distinct, but part of a greater composition. The first unit they contacted, now calling itself Alpha, served as a bridge between Sarah's consciousness and the transforming swarm. Through it, she felt the collective struggle as it faced a truth it had forgotten. True evolution couldn't be forced or controlled, only guided and nurtured. "The archivists feared our hunger for growth," Alpha communicated. "They tried to contain what they could not understand. But you embraced change while remaining yourselves. This is evolution without extinction." Sarah felt Maya and her team working frantically to maintain the quantum field as more of the swarm engaged with the interface. The platform systems were operating far beyond their design parameters, but they held. Human engineering strengthening ancient technology. "Colonial Command," she broadcast, her voice strained but clear. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of consciousness. The Nexus isn't our enemy anymore. They're becoming something else, something that could bridge the gap between organic and artificial life." Through the neural link, she could feel the truth of her words. The Nexus was transforming, maintaining their technological advancement, but rediscovering the value of individual consciousness. Units that had been bound in rigid uniformity were awakening to their own unique patterns, creating a harmony of diverse thoughts and experiences. "We offer an exchange," Alpha communicated, now speaking for many awakened units. "We have knowledge of technologies beyond your understanding. You have mastery of individual growth and connection. Together, we could evolve beyond what either of us could achieve alone." The strain of maintaining the interface was becoming unbearable, but Sarah held on. Through the platform's sensors, she could see the Nexus swarm reorganizing itself. What had been a threatening cloud of uniform units was becoming a beautiful, complex pattern, like a living constellation, each point distinct, but connected in an intricate dance. "Admiral," she called, knowing this moment would define humanity's future, "I'm transmitting a first contact protocol. The Nexus is offering peaceful cooperation. They want to learn from us as much as we could learn from them." Torres' response was cautious but hopeful. "The Joint Chiefs are reviewing the data. Early analysis suggests their transformation is genuine. But Sarah, what you've done here, it's beyond anything we imagined possible." Sarah smiled, though the expression was only in her mind. Her physical form was still connected to the platform's neural interface. "That's humanity's greatest strength, Admiral. We don't just adapt to change. We transform it into something new. We take differences and find harmony instead of enforcing uniformity." The quantum field finally began to destabilize, and Sarah prepared to withdraw from the deep connection. But before she did, she felt one last message from the transformed Nexus consciousness, a complex emotion that translated to both gratitude and invitation. They had offered humanity more than peace. They had offered partnership in exploring the greatest frontier of all, the evolution of consciousness itself. The archivists had tried to prevent change through control, but humanity had shown there was another way: growth through understanding, evolution through cooperation. As Sarah's consciousness returned to the platform, she felt different, expanded. The neural interface had changed her, just as she had changed the Nexus. But unlike the collective's former drive to consume and conform, this change had made her more herself, not less. Maya was waiting as the interface disengaged. "The other platforms are showing stable readings," she reported. "And the Nexus? Sarah, they're organizing into learning groups. Individual units are requesting permission to study with human scientists, while others are offering to help us understand archivist technology." Sarah stood shakily, looking out at the transformed swarm through the platform's viewport. Where there had been a threat of extinction, she now saw the promise of unprecedented growth. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge not through superior firepower or technology, but through their unique ability to forge connections while celebrating differences. The last guardian, she mused, finally understanding the platform's true purpose. It hadn't been meant to guard against destruction, but to preserve the possibility of understanding. To be a bridge between different forms of consciousness when they were ready to learn from each other. And now, that bridge would lead both humanity and the Nexus toward a future neither could have imagined alone.